Well, hi, and thanks for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. Today's a frigid day here in New England, which is why I'm all bundled up out here. The reason we're outside is we're going to be working on this stock in a few minutes, doing some sanding, so I don't want all that dust in the workshop, so I came outside to do it today, but I had to bundle up to do that. Now, I know I promised you guys a Cometa 220 compact video, but that's put on hold until I get a new breech seal. I screwed up the other day when I was shooting the rifle. I put a loose pellet in the bore, trying new pellets. It fell out as I was closing the action. I didn't catch it in time, and when the action closed, it damaged the breech seal because the pellet was in the way. Anyway, long story short, I had to reach out to John at Keystone Air Guns, where the gun came from. Great guy, by the way. Reach out to him. He carries a full line of Cometa air guns, and just a fantastic guy. So go ahead and use my name. Let him know I sent you. At any rate, John was kind enough to ship me back an O-ring, but it hasn't come in yet. So, and I thought I'd fill in the gap today. And what we're going to do is go back to work on this custom HW95 stock that we've been working on. We started last year, actually, and it's been put on hold until I had some more time to get back to it. But this is a beautiful stock that my friend Mark sent in to the channel. It's a wonderful gift, Mark. I can't thank you enough. For those of you who don't know Mark, he's a frequent contributor to the channel. You'll see him a lot answering questions, and he's a wealth of knowledge. If I don't know the answer, I can almost guarantee you he'll know the answer. So, and I think he enjoys helping other air gunners out. So by all means, seek him out when you need some help, and I think he'd be glad to help you. But at any rate, this is the HW95 stock, and what we're going to be doing is sanding the stock down, getting it ready for finish today. I think what I'll do is I'll get into the finishing process with you a little bit as well. We'll get started on that, and then we'll call it a wrap for today. So let's, without further ado, we'll get started. I want to thank you again for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. Stick around, I'll be right back. Okay, so that's the stock sanded down with 150 grit. There were some imperfections. There's some chipping out at the hole where the 4-screw goes in on the right hand side of the stock. There's a little bit of wood chipped out there. I noticed while I was sanding what looks like the beginning of a crack in this stock, but it seems to have disappeared now that I sanded it, so perhaps it was just a scratch. I'm not sure. But anyway, if that should reappear, we'll go ahead and repair that as well. That'll be another segment for the video, I guess. I'm going to check for it once I get off camera, but in the meantime, I'm going to continue sanding. Now again, I was using 150. I'm going to step up to 220 now, and we're going to go ahead and do some more work on this and get it even smoothed down a little more. And from there, I'm going to have to do some hand work. That's kind of boring, I mean, but we'll show you a little bit of that, I guess, off camera. On camera a little later while we're indoors. But for now, let's get started on this. All right, so we're going to move on to 220, and we're going to follow all the same contours as we did before. We still have to be careful, even with a finer grit, that we don't take these edges off. So I'm being very careful not to do that. I've had a lot of experience hand sanding like this. If you're not comfortable, you can always just go by hand. I oftentimes will use a good sized rubber eraser to wrap the sandpaper around, and that really helps a lot. It's soft enough where it'll adjust a little bit to the contours of the stock, but it's firm enough so you can keep a nice smooth surface. So keep that in mind too. It makes a good backer for sandpaper, one of those big school erasers that you used to use when you were a little kid. All right, so let's get started. 220 grit. All right, so that was a once over with the 220. From there, I'm going to move to 400, and then we're pretty much done with the palm sander. From there, we're going to be working by hand. So at any rate, let me get the paper switched out, and I'll be back. All right, so we're on to 400 grit. And we're going to do a little more. You'll notice that I am avoiding certain areas, like the little hook in here behind the pistol grip. That's a tight area. We're going to do that by hand. The same with the hook here in the cheek piece. I can get in there a little bit, but it's still a little too tight for the machine. And we got to do a little extra work in here as well. And where else? I think that's mostly it, except for right at the very end here. I've been able to follow the line of the cheek piece with the edge of the mouse sander. However, the line gets narrower and narrower as I get towards the front. In other words, shallower and shallower. So if I get too close, I know I'm going to ride that edge over with the sandpaper, and I certainly don't want to do that. So I'm being careful there so that we can touch it up by hand later on. Anyway, let's get started. Again, this is 400 grit. This is the last pass that we're going to do with the machine. Now you may have probably noticed that I've been avoiding the bottom of the grip cap that we made earlier in the series. And that's because I've already sanded it down quite a bit. It's getting very small. So now that we've reached the 400 grit, I'm going to give it a real quick once over with the 400, but I certainly wanted to stay away from the coarser grits because I really don't want to remove much more material. You can see how thin it is towards the rear here. So we're going to give it the quick once over with 400 grit, and then I think we'll be done with the sander. We'll bring it inside, we'll do a little touch up, and maybe even get a little finish on the gun stock before the day's out. So anyway, let me get this pistol grip touched up here. That's better. Yeah, that feels good. All right, so we're at 400 grit. I feel a little rough spot here I'm going to hit. Okay, so I'm really happy with the way it's turning out so far. So I think we're done outside here. We'll bring it inside. We'll do a little work with the manual hand sanding, and then from there we'll get some finish on here. And next time we revisit this project, I'm going to teach you my method for finishing a gun stock. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's the one I've been using for years, and I really like it. It's a hand-rubbed oil finish, and we're going to be using Birchwood Casey's True Oil. But I'm going to show you a little secret that I learned a long time ago that really works out great as long as you're not going to stain that stock. If you're going to stain the stock, I don't recommend the technique that I'm about to show you. But if you're going to leave the stock natural, that's the perfect way to finish the stock as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, you might want to tune in for that one, but we're going to move inside and I'll be right back. What we've got is the stock, a piece of 150 grit sandpaper, that little rubber eraser I mentioned earlier, which makes a really good backer for the sandpaper. I just checked in my inventory and I don't have any 220 grit paper, so I'm going to end up sanding from 150 to 400, which means I got to do a little more work with the 400 than I normally would have to. But not that it won't work, it's just that it's going to be more work. Alright, so we're going to roll this up like so. So I got a nice little piece of sandpaper here that I can get into these contours with. And then I'm just going to sand inside the grip with the 150 grit, just to kind of keep that shape. Alright, so you get the idea. I'm just going to always sand with the grain, in case you weren't aware of that. With the mouse sander, it doesn't matter because that's what they call an oscillating sander or a vibratory sander, and it doesn't leave marks even if you sand across the grain. However, if you sand across the grain with ordinary sandpaper, you'll get scratches in your finish that you don't want. You want to try to avoid that. If your purpose, however, is to remove an awful lot of material, like right here I've got some what look like scratches in the pistol grip, and if you want to remove more material, what you can do is sand across grain, but then go back and sand with the grain in order to bring out those scratches, or to remove those scratches. So I don't know if you can see right here, we've got what looks like some scratches. So I'm going to go right across the grain and knock those out of there. Yeah, that's much better. notice I've gone back to sanding with the grain. Finish sand that out so we don't leave any scratches from sanding across the grain. Beautiful palm swell on the left-hand side for a lefty like myself. It's going to be an elegant stock when it's done. Really should make that 95 perform. Now, we shot that in an earlier video with the factory stock, and the gun was very impressive. It was doing great all the way out to 55 yards. So this stock should help to even steady it more off the bench and make it even more shootable. Okay, now I'm going to try to get to the edge of this cheek rest here. Now this has got the double line cheek rest, so it's got this second line with a nice little radius in between, and this is all handwork. So again, I'm going to start with this 400 grit paper. So I want to make a nice clean edge because we're going to use that edge to ride this radius here. Like this. I'm going to try to get in this radius, and I'm going to do it with my finger. And hopefully I can keep that edge nice and crisp. And fold this paper up so I can get it in there tight. And we're going to work our way up the stock like so, right where it runs out. And we're going to work that radius with this 400 grit paper to try to keep that edge nice and clean, nice and crisp right here. Nice to do this sort of thing commercially. I used to work for a lot of the local gun shops. I had a firearm refinishing business where I would re-blue guns. I still have my bluing tanks, as a matter of fact. I still use them from time to time. But I used to refinish guns, redo stocks, and gold plate triggers and extractors and things like that, and just try to make a nice gun into a one of a kind, or at least restore it back to where it was. So I've had a little bit of experience working with stocks, and I'm not claiming to be a pro by any means, but I was good enough where the gun shops were happy to pay me for my work, so that was nice. Installing butt pads, that was a very common thing. And on a finished stock, that's a tricky process because you can very easily damage the finish. But I had a technique and it used to work out pretty good, and believe it or not, I did most of the work on the belt sander, which was very risky indeed, but I always got away with it. So again, you go slow and take your time and try not to be in a rush. Mark earlier, and I didn't tell you his last name, so it's going to be hard for you guys to find him on the forum. His name is Mark with a C, Myers, M-Y-E-R-S, and you'll see him on the site. He usually comments each time a video is released. He's a good friend. I've talked to him many times on the phone. It's nice to make new friends in the hobby. I really enjoy it. However, I'm such a busy guy between working full-time and running this channel and my other hobbies and trying to keep my family happy with time well spent with them. I don't have the time to talk to people sometimes as much as I'd like to, and I haven't talked to Mark in quite a while. When we get on the phone, I mean, we'll be on the phone for an hour or better. So you got to have that kind of time to set aside to make that phone call, and I haven't done it. I owe Mark a phone call one of these days. Okay, looking good, better and better. The real touchy area here, and I'm gonna say it's almost good enough. As I can see some blemishes in the rear here that we're gonna try to get out, and we may actually have to step back down to 150 grit to do that. Those look like they're in there. But yeah, that's the process anyway. You get the idea. So I'm going to cut away here, and we'll come back when it's time to put some finish on this thing, and we'll show you how to do that. So, all right, I'll be back in a little while, and we'll get started with it. So the stock is sanded down to the point where I'm satisfied that it's ready for finish. So next step is to wipe it down, get all that sawdust off of there. So we're going to just use this rag to do just that. Get in all these little nooks and crannies if we can. We've already blown it off to get most of the dust off ahead of time. You can just do it with a rag if you like. Next step. Alright, so there we go. That's looking beautiful. The next thing we're going to do is wipe it down with some mineral oil, and that'll help to pull anything that's down in those pores out, because we're going to fill those pores later, but we're not going to do it now. So we're just going to clean this wood up. And the nice thing about this part of the job is that we get a rough idea of what the gun's going to look like. I mean, what the stock color is going to be once the finish is on. So that's kind of nice. Child-proof cap is proving to be too much for me. There we go. Okay, so we got a little rag here. We'll put a little mineral spirits on the rag. You can buy mineral spirits at almost any hardware store. They won't harm the wood at all. It'll evaporate and leave no traces. Alright, look at that. Is that going to be a pretty stock or what? Can you see the grain? Can you see that? That is one beautiful looking piece of wood. So we're wiping all the sawdust off, but at the same time we're exposing the grain and getting a good look at what we're going to end up with. Isn't that nice? Look at that. That is one gorgeous piece of wood. Alright. So, now that we've wiped it down, we may have raised the grain. So once this dries, I'm going to give it the feel test, and if it feels like the grain is raised, I'm going to knock it down again with 400 grit paper. But there you go, folks. I don't know if you can see that. But that is going to be one beautiful stock when it's done. Alright, cool. Beautiful grain. Alright, that's done, and we're going to put this right here for now. We're going to let it dry, and then we'll come back and we'll put the first coat of finish on. Okay, so the mineral spirits are pretty much evaporated and soaked into the wood, so that the wood is dry to the touch now. There's no residue on my hands, and that's prepped the wood perfectly for the first coat of finish. But before we apply the first coat of finish, we're going to remove the butt plate, or the butt pad, recoil pad, because we don't want to get any finish on that if we can help it. And we'll reinstall that when the stock is finished. Now what I've done here is I've just opened a can of an old can. I've had this for years. This is butcher's wax. You can still buy it at hardware stores. Any kind of floor wax, paste floor wax for hardwood floors will be just fine. Butcher's wax is just one brand, but they're all basically the same. And this just lubricates my screwdriver so that it won't harm that recoil pad when I insert it to get those screws out. It's a Phillips head screw, if you don't remember from the previous video when we went ahead and installed it. And let's see if we can find that screw head. There we go. We're engaged. Now we'll remove this one a little bit. And if it starts to lift the pad, I'm trying to hold the pad down as I back it off. But if the pad starts to come with it, then I'm going to bring the other side out a little bit too, so I don't stress anything But it looks like the screw's going to come right out for us. Alright. Okay, we're loose. Alright, now I'm going to pick up that recoil pad that I just dropped. I'll set that aside. Okay, so what I've got, this is an old bottle, but it's still good. I store these upside down, that way they don't develop a film across the top. It instead develops on the bottom, because it will begin to harden in the bottle once it's been opened. So this one here, I just loosen the lid up. Now this is, you can't have a problem getting your hands dirty when you do this job, because this is going to be hand rubbed in. It's going to be rubbed in with the palm of my hand, and because it's the first coat, I am not the least bit concerned about putting it on too heavy. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put it on quite heavy. I don't want any runs, but I want a lot of finish on the gun, because I want it to soak in, and I want it to sit on top as well, because the next step, all right, you can see how much I put on my hand. That's quite a bit. That's going to absorb into the stock, and we're going to do as much as we can with this, and I'll add a little more if I need to. All right, you ready? We're going to just lay it on the stock like that. All right, just buff it around, and then you're going to rub it into the stock. And again, right now, we're not concerned with making a smooth finish. I'm not concerned at all with that. I just want to completely coat every piece of this wood with this True Oil. A lot of guys will tell you, well, this is cheap stuff, you can buy it at Walmart. Well, you know what? I've tried the more expensive stuff, and it doesn't seem to work any better than this stuff. This stuff has always performed very well for me. So I use it exclusively when I do this type of work. Alright, so again, I'm just putting it on heavy. I'm not worrying about how much I put on. I'm not worrying about fingerprints or streaks in the finish. I don't want runs, but other than that, I want a lot of material on this stock to begin with. The big slather. Now this will mostly wash off with the same mineral spirits that you used to wipe the stock down with. When you're done, you can wipe your hands down with it, but you're still going to need some soap and water, and you may find that even then there's still traces of it on your hands. So you can't have a problem getting dirty doing this kind of work, that's for sure. Alright, so we've applied a pretty liberal amount. I'm going to put a little more on the forend. I think I stretched it a little too far. So let's do that. Okay. There we go. All up on the top, down through the pistol grip. That's important in there, especially. Alright, get some down in these grooves where the screw holes belong, and where the screws go through. Alright, and that is all we need to do for now. You can leave it as rough as it needs to be, as rough as it is. You're not worried about that right now. You just want to make sure everything is good and coated in that True Oil. And then we're going to sit that down for a day, or at least 12 hours, and let it thoroughly dry. And then we'll come back and I'll show you that secret. And that's in a couple of weeks. Okay, so that's it for today. I'm glad you stopped by. I hope you enjoyed the progress on the 95 custom stock that we're working on, the left-hand custom stock. Thanks to Mark Myers, who sent it into the channel. I really appreciate this, Mark. Now that I can see what it's going to look like, I'm really excited to get this job to the point where we can call it finished. So yeah, we're going to continue with this in a couple of weeks, I'm sure. So stick around. Always come back on Saturday nights, every other Saturday night at 7 p.m. We will release a new video for you. We're going to get that Cometa 220 compact video out for you too real soon, as soon as that breech seal comes in. So I just want to thank you folks for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and by all means hit the bell to be reminded of future videos. Thanks again, folks. Have a great day.